Well, this is the Dean Abbott podcast. Today, my guest is Twitter user, homeschool mom, an artist, and my friend, Duckie Louise, who some of you may know from Twitter. How's it going?
It's going all right. What about you?
Well, it's late in the afternoon. It's nap time.
It is nap
And
time.
I'm awake doing a podcast.
We're both doing this so tired.
Isn't it amazing that we're both recording a podcast at the same time?
Yeah, and we're both exhausted.
How's Twitter going for you lately?
Oh, it's going all right, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm on it too much. But
Yes.
But have you heard of the Brick? There's a product called Brick.
Tell me about it.
It's it's like a little brick, and
Okay.
it has a magnet on the back. Excuse me, sorry, I'm still recovering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can program it. I told Joe I wanted one, and he got me one for Christmas, which I wasn't expecting. I'm totally stoked about it. But I think you can program it to shut down certain apps when you're close to it. So,
like will you come within like a certain range of the brick and it shuts down?
Yeah. Like whatever you want it to shut down and leaves the rest. Because sometimes I don't want to leave my phone. I want my camera. I don't want to like miss something cute that my kids are doing or whatever. But then it's just like, oh, now I have my phone, so I'm looking at Twitter and I don't want to be. But anyways, I'm stoked about it because I'm like, I can just put it. I haven't decided where yet.
You haven't.
Whenever I go over there, it's like, it'll just shut it all down.
Do you think you'll actually set it up?
Yeah. I'll set it up. I don't know when. Maybe.
Well, tomorrow. Okay? Yeah, when you're not busy looking at Twitter.
Right.
Sorry. People have been nice to you there lately?
Yeah. Well, the people that matter.
Yes. I was told I had somebody say something mean to me today on Twitter. And then somebody else DM'd me to say, "You're so sassy with them."
What?
That's what somebody said something mean to me, and I've had so many mean things said over the years that now my approach is simply to say there's no conceivable world where I could even theoretically care less about what you have to say or what you think about this, right? Uh-huh. And someone DM'd me to say that was sassy.
That was sassy?
Uh-huh.
That's like straightforward.
Yes. And, I've dealt with enough trolls to think that's all that counts. That's the only thing that gets to them, right? Yeah. Because they're just...
Yeah, because it's like you don't matter.
Right.
I try to tell them, and they don't believe me. Maybe they do, and they say they don't. I don't know. I don't mute people fast enough.
Right, or block. But I think now it has come out that blocking hurts your reach. That blocking, if you block people, the algorithm counts against you.
Huh. Doesn't it just count against everything? I feel like the algorithm counts against everything I like to do, like block people who are obnoxious, refer to X as Twitter, not rage bait, at least not on purpose.
Count against you for that? If on Twitter you refer to it as Twitter, does the algorithm knock you?
I heard that it does, but I don't know if it actually does. Mm-hmm. I don't know yet.
That's the other thing about Twitter is that people tweet about the algorithm all the time. And there's literally nothing bad that the Twitter algorithm doesn't do.
Right.
Yeah, no. So like since we're done, I'm going to write a tweet that says, "I heard that if you tweet about fruit, the Twitter algorithm turns off your pacemaker."
Your pacemaker. Not the pacemaker. That's good.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I see someone tweet about that algorithm, I should say something nonsensical like that about it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think that I could just interact with it that way. Like I get on days like this, like I'm so tired and I've been sick and like you can hear my voice is all crusty. But
The
I've been so happy. Like, it's a happy, fun day. However, which is why I was up so late. Because,
oh, yes, you got an idea at 2 a.m.
yeah, which happens. And then I'm like, shh, Sarah, shut it down. Like, this isn't like this is not the epic idea that my brain wants to think it is. I know it's not, because I've had thousands of ideas like this in the past, and I haven't executed on any of them. It's just really fun. You've got this, it's like a shiny new toy. Why? Why? I'm like,
Can you tell us what the idea was?
I mean,
You don't have to. I just
no, it's okay. And it's just funny because it's not like some kind of epic thing, you know. I just had this thought that was like, man, I should really resurrect my Etsy account because people are on me to do that all the time.
Right.
And I love making things, but I don't want to be a factory. Like, I tried this once, nearly killed me. Don't ever want to do it again. So from there, I've always had this thought that was like, what if I made something that was, you know, one and done, printable, something like that.
Right.
And I have had ideas about it. Like, I can make patterns for the stuffies that I've invented or whatever, which I've never made patterns for anything because I don't use patterns.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to make them, and learning how to make them sounds really boring, so I never did that.
Right.
Anyways, last night I was just suddenly like, I could ask Grok. What do people buy as printables? And so I did that. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I could make worksheets like for other homeschool kids, like to put in their morning baskets. And then I was like, I could do the seasons. I could make them really pretty. I could do like the animals and the plants and the flowers. And I was like, Sarah, shut it down. Shut it down. You have to go to sleep. And this is like, I could do it. I'll probably do it. Maybe I'll do it. But I don't know. I was like writing notes in my thing like, tomorrow ask Claude. Don't ask it now. Don't ask it now. Go to sleep. So anyway.
And you know, it sounds like you're sitting on a gold mine.
Probably not. But I have no shortage of ideas that sound like they could be sitting on a gold mine, but they're probably all just nothing burgers. Anyways, but they do keep me awake until 5 a.m. sometimes. When it's like, you could look at Pinterest and get some more ideas about this idea. You could write some things about this idea. You could brainstorm right now. Now it's 3 a.m.
You don't have ADHD, do you?
Mm-hmm.
I ask because you mention that often on Twitter.
Yeah.
What's that been like for you?
Like that story I just told. Yeah.
Well, tell me more about that.
It's having a lot of wonderful
like that when you were a kid?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time daydreaming as a child. So I have ADHD has become like the blanket term, but when I was diagnosed, there was ADHD and ADD. So my actual diagnosis was ADD, not ADHD. But
so you're not hyperactive.
Well, what they found out is that the hyperactivity, all people who have ADHD, it's all ADHD now, but they've separated it in a different way. Whatever. It's so annoying because it's also annoying. They've separated it in a different way now. So now they say, instead of ADD and ADHD, they say ADHD inattentive type, or ADHD hyperactive type, or ADHD combined type, I think is the other one.
Okay.
So if I had been diagnosed now, it would be ADHD inattentive type.
I see. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean?
It means, well, so you would say like I'm not hyperactive, which is why in the past it would have been ADHD. But what they figured out is that, yes, the inattentive type is hyperactive. It's just mental hyperactivity instead of physical. So
keep
much.
It by.
Yeah. That's why my brain is like bouncing around like a ping pong ball. And it just looks like I'm just sitting here like spaced out.
Yeah. Did that make school difficult?
Yeah. Well, the problem is that school was really boring.
That is true. Yes.
And the things that I was thinking about were way more interesting most of the time. Unless it was an interesting class and the teacher was great. I mean, you know, of course, I always loved my English teachers because they wanted to talk about the things that I wanted to think about. And math was always torture. And so I mostly just sat by the window if I could. And I looked out the window. And I thought about whatever I felt like thinking about. And sometimes I snuck books. I loved reading. And so sometimes I would sneak books in, and they had those desks that were like, had the cubby inside. And so I would like put my little book in it and just like secretly read instead of listen. And I got away with it until I was 10 because I wasn't like causing a problem. But my fourth grade teacher, her name was Miss Livingston. I still remember her. She was actually one of my favorites. I loved her a lot.
Okay.
But she was really observant. And I remember her having a meeting with my mom where she said, she was like, so it's crazy that I remember this. Like I was sitting under the desk because I really liked this teacher, but I was like, oh, she's going to say something, like she's got something to say and I don't like it. So I like went under the desk and just sat there. Like,
because you were nervous, ashamed, scared?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't like necessarily hiding. It's just like kind of like a fort.
Oh, sure.
You know, like it's just a little more fun under there.
Right.
And they're going to say something that I probably wasn't going to like. So I was just going to like hide in the fort, sort of.
Sure.
And just kind of listen through the legs of the table.
And so what did Miss Livingston have to say?
She said, when the bell rings and the class gets up to leave, Sarah doesn't leave. She doesn't notice. Doesn't notice the bell rang, doesn't notice everybody left. Because why? You know, she was
she's
like,
so
I think,
mentally involved.
Yeah. And so she would have to come like tap me on the shoulder or something and say, hey, it's time for recess. You can go. And sorry. And I'd be like, okay. So I was like compliant. Fairly compliant. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking back. Depends. It depended. I was compliant if I liked you.
Right. That reminds me, two things to say about that, and then I want to ask you a little more. But when I was 12, when I was probably even earlier than that, it's probably 8 or so. My family went to the grocery store one day, and in the grocery store, they had a big display set up, and it was a display full of cassette tapes.
Okay.
And if you spent so much on your groceries, you could get a cassette tape. And on all the cassette tapes were old-time radio shows from the 30s or 40s. And we got them. And I didn't even know at that point that radio had once been like this. But we got a couple episodes of The Shadow and other shows from that time that were kind of like Twilight Zone-ish, you know, like suspense or...
That sounds like so much fun.
Well, I love them.
I would have loved that. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a speaker in your room or something? I'm like be able to hear myself talking coming back through my...
It's echoing back?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have the volume up on anything? Okay.
I could, yeah. I do have like this thing. I don't...
There you go. I turn it up.
Hold on. I got this thing.
Oh, okay. I don't know what to do with that, but okay.
What am I turning up? My volume?
No, that's okay. We'll just plunge forward, and people can pretend it's not happening.
No. I'll look. You keep telling your story, and I'm going to text Joe.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell him that that's an issue. He'll come fix it.
So I loved these old time radio shows, and when I went into 7th grade, I was about 12. I found this book. I think it was in the school library about old time radio and about the production of those shows and about how the entertainment worked in the golden age. Entertainment industry worked in the golden age of radio, and I was absorbed with this book. So that tells you something. I was the 12-year-old kid who wanted to read a 400-page book about the history of broadcasting in the 30s. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in science class reading it. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Van Meter, without saying a word to me, just walked up and took it out of my hands.
I knew you were going to say that before, because this was my life too. Yeah.
And if I were in that position today, this would earn a massive negative reaction.
Yeah.
Because imagine if I had been an adult. I mean, would Mr. Van Meter walk up and take a book out of any adult's hand under any circumstances?
No, of course not. Mm-mm.
And I just look back at that and I think, what a stupid system to say your active learning about this thing that you have like a passionate level of interest in is an obstacle to your schoolwork.
Right.
And as opposed to the school saying, "Oh, I see that you're really interested in this. How could we maybe help you? Maybe we could why don't we work on getting a script and recording one of these things and teach you how all that is done."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And instead of working with the natural inclinations of the student, you get the book ripped out of your hand.
Right. Well, and this was what separated the really good teachers from the not good teachers, right? Mm-hmm. Like I had, when I was in high school, I coped with how boring everything was
Right.
by doodling a lot. And I also got really into origami. So I memorized a lot of different folds, and I would just, people would pass gum around, and I would just I'd do tinier and tinier ones. Like I'd carry a needle with me so I could just do like the tiniest little itty bitty. I'm like, this is so tiny, and the folds were all perfect. I'm so proud of myself.
Isn't that amazing? How old were you then?
16.
Think about that for a moment. I mean, isn't that amazing? That that you were that serious an origami artist at 16, and that was considered something to be discouraged.
Oh my gosh! Well, let me tell you. Here's a tale of two teachers. Okay, I'm so sorry. It's so. Ugh. Okay, we had the good teacher. His name was Mr. Forbes. I love how we still remember all the teachers' names. We know who they were. He was just great. We loved him so much. Mm-hmm. And, oh gosh, there's too many stories happening at once. Which one do I share? Okay, let's stay with the origami. I'd make, I made the little crane, like your standard paper crane. And I made the other version of crane that could flap its wings if you pulled its tail. And I made like a little frog that could hop. And then there was another one that was like a little horse. And you could do a game with it where like its tail stuck out. So you could like pop it under the tail and try to make it do a flip and land on its feet. So those were like my favorite ones to do. So I would just like do them every day and just like line them up on my desk. And they were like gum, like foil or whatever. So Mr. Forbes would walk past my desk and he would like pick one up and he would show the class, look at this. Isn't this amazing? And then like the next day he would pick one up because he knew I did it every day and it wasn't like a big deal. Like he'd pick one up and he'd like go over to the overhead projector and like set it down on it. And then later he'd walk by and just smash it. But it was like all love,
Right.
Like we loved that. Mm-hmm. And then I had another teacher and like, okay, one thing about ADHD, I think I have complained on Twitter before many times about how much I can't stand unsolicited advice. And it's not completely true because sometimes people tell you things that are so useful. So you never want to just be like, never give me any advice ever.
Right.
But it's tricky because so much advice that people give. And then I feel guilty for feeling this way because I'm like, they're just trying to help. I know they're just trying to help. But they say things like, well, why don't you have you ever tried getting a planner? And you're like,
yes, that's very helpful.
Yeah. Like, can I interest you in my graveyard of planners over here? Right. They're all very pretty. And I always forget to look at all of them.
Right.
Like, how am I supposed to remember to look at it? Especially before we had smartphones. I saw a meme where some guy was like, what's going to remind me to look in my planner? A planner? So
right.
When I was in high school, they were like really dead set on teaching us to use planners. Like I don't know if y'all had this, but we had like the official school planner that was given to us like by our high school. And so I had my planner, and they would tell you to write your homework in it every day. The number of classes I had where I didn't even notice that the homework was being written on the board, like in that corner, until like the semester was almost over. And I was like, oh, that's how everybody knew what to do every day. Like, why? Anyway, I don't know if I lost my planner. I had all the notebooks. I couldn't remember to look at things. I was just desperate for some way to remember that homework existed after I got home from school. So in one of my classes, I was sitting there. I had this teacher. Her name was Miss Bose, and she was best friends with another teacher named Miss Brown. And they were like you think they would be. I don't know how else to say that. Anyway,
how we would think they would be because their names are Bose and Brown.
No. Once I tell the story, it'll conjure.
All right, go for it.
It's like they were probably girls who. This is gonna sound really mean. I shouldn't have said their names. I should start the story over.
All right, just they were both B words.
They were both like
Mrs. B.
Mrs. B and Mrs. Other B, right? They had they were like the popular girls who peaked in high school. But now they're high school teachers and they're best friends with each other. So I was sitting in one of their classes, and I was trying to figure out how to remember that homework exists when I get home. And I folded a piece of paper into this big paper crane, as you do. I thought maybe if I fold it into a big crane and write my homework on the crane, then I'll see it. And it won't just look like every other piece of paper in my bag that has homework written on it. And I don't remember which one is today, whatever. So I'm just like folding away, like all proud of myself. Like, I'm going to do it today.
Right.
My teacher sees me and she's just like, that is so rude. I am so sick of you doing origami in my class. You are not listening to me. This teacher hated me anyways. Sometimes I would just walk in the door and she'd just send me straight to the corner before anything even happened. And I was always just like, I don't know if I'm a problem. Like, I don't get it. Like, was I doing something really obnoxious? Maybe. I don't know. My best friend David was her favorite student, which was also kind of hilarious because he turned in a blank piece of paper one time and got an A on it. Like, he could do absolutely no wrong. So anyway, she took this origami thing away from me, and I was just like, okay. But after class, I had to go back to her, and I was like, don't actually care about the origami itself, but that you erased the homework from the board, and that has my homework on it, so can I have it back? And she was like, no, I'm going to give it to other teacher, and you're going to go ask her for it, and you're going to tell her what you did so I could get like reamed out twice in order to get my homework back. So I did it, and I got reamed out twice, and I got my homework back. Did I do that homework? I don't know. Probably not.
Right. So so many things to respond to. First of all, it's important for people to see how it is that there is a certain personality or set of values, a kind of personality imperialism that is inherent in the education establishment. Yeah. So the part of the job of the education establishment is to kind of make you have the personality that works well with a planner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's very easy for some people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just that we want everyone to adopt this helpful habit. It's a way of saying, here are the good people. And the good people are the ones who easily adapt the methods that help them achieve our ends.
Yeah.
And so this is because the school system exists for itself rather than for the student. Mm-hmm. And so if it existed for the student, I would be producing radio dramas right now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually.
And you would be doing whatever. Origami, whatever you want to do. Maybe what you would be doing is just drawing lines on a piece of paper where the folds should be and making those into printouts that you could sell on Etsy.
Yeah, probably. I could still do it, but
Right. But the point is, this is the way the school system works to kind of impose upon everyone a certain set of values or personality traits that are helpful to the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as your friend turning in a blank piece of paper, I had a government teacher when I was a senior.
Yeah.
And he literally could not have cared less about, he taught government and he could not have cared less. He was also a coach, and that's what he cared about. And so he would give us, an assignment every week, read this chapter and answer the questions at the end of the book, at the end of the chapter. Then I would do that, and I would not necessarily get very good grades. And a friend of mine, he got an A+ every week. But he only did the assignment once, and he just turned in this. So for chapter 9, he turned in the same answer. He would just copy them on a different piece of paper. He did
the audacity,
and he got perfect score every time.
That's amazing. I honestly could see my friend doing that. It's the audacity. Like I could never. I was actually not the kind of student who would have done that. You know what I mean? Like, which was because this is what we were talking about the other day about trying to be good. Mm-hmm. And that juxtaposition between what was good in like the eyes of, I don't know, it was so weird because I was such a goody two-shoes kid. Like I didn't cheat. I never would have cheated on like any kind of test or paper or anything. I never would have plagiarized. Right. I didn't do like the things that were like obviously morally not okay. Like I wasn't drinking. I wasn't getting into like any of those like normal teenage shenanigans. Nothing.
But that makes you worse for the system.
I guess because I just couldn't get my homework done.
Because then you become. I was very similar, and you become even worse for the system because then you are both, in a way, a huge problem and also above reproach.
Oh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And so the system has even more reason to want to get rid of you because your compliance, your goodness, your being above reproach is a way of indicating their shortcomings. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that you don't fit in well indicates their shortcomings. So if you didn't fit in well, but you were also a pothead, they could just get rid of you. You see what I'm saying? Right. They could say, well, she's a druggie and we can't just have stuff. Yeah. And she can't, and we're the good ones.
Yeah.
And so we get rid of her.
Right.
And if you had but also if you'd been a wildly rebellious kid who somehow also got good grades, they would have just overlooked.
Oh, if you had good grades, you're golden.
Right.
It seemed like. And it was weird because you could get good grades by being a different kind of golden too. Like my friend who just got an A with a blank paper, Mm-hmm. It's so interesting, like the dynamics of all of it. And my stuff is anecdotal too, of course. Right. I don't know how much of it applies universally. And like my school was a small town, like rural high school with, I think there were like 800 students. Well, now I can't remember whether that's my graduating class or the whole school.
Right.
I have like no memory for numbers whatsoever, but it was a small school. And wait, I lost it. No, I was just thinking about how like you said something about not fitting in. And then I was trying to figure out like, did I fit in or not? Because in some ways I absolutely did not, right? Like I was too tall, too frizzy. I was Catholic in a Southern Baptist town. So that's all a problem. Mm-hmm. But like when I think back on like my friendships in high school and it being kind of a small school, I had a lot of friends, like a lot of really good friends that I could rely on. And I was friends with people in like across genres a lot. Sure. There was a very small group of like hyper popular kids who weren't like mean. Their parents were like really rich And they were, the way they interacted with people, excuse me, was kind of like political, I would say. Like, I almost felt like they weren't allowed to be friends with certain people. Like, it was almost like they were just allowed to be friends with each other. So it was like, I didn't really even take their rejection personally. I was just like, you're not allowed to be friends with me. Total aside, I was talking to my bestie about this the other day because I'm still best friends with my best friend from high school. And we were talking about one of the popular kids and like how she's doing now. And which is fine. She's fine. She was really sweet. And I was telling my friend, I said something that was a little not the nicest thing to say.
You want to say it here?
Felt bad.
You want to repeat it?
No.
Oh.
Okay. I'm not going to say her name, so it doesn't really matter, but I should probably not say it again. I felt bad. She doesn't even like know me anymore. Like, is it even relevant, you know? But like, anyways, I made my little stupid comment and I was like, I'm so sorry. And so I was backtracking because I was like, really and truly, she was the nicest one. She was really sweet. But I remember, I was telling my bestie that I remember sitting in class with one of our other friends who we're still friends with to this day too, actually. Thank goodness. It's very sweet that we're all still friends. It's kind of a miracle. But anyway, I was sitting next to him and we were watching this girl who's so popular. Like, let's just call her Taylor. And she was sitting like in her desk working on her math and her boyfriend was leaning over her to like help. And all of her body language was leaning away from him. And my friend was like, look at them. She is so uncomfortable. Like, she doesn't even like him. And I was like, I think you're right, but I don't understand why they're dating. And like, my friend was like, it's because their parents said they have to. Like, they put them together.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I was talking to my bestie about today, because I was like, I actually really feel for her because the career that she's in right now that I made my little snarky comment about, I was like, it's actually not really even fair, like, for me to say that because I almost feel like she didn't even choose that. Like, I feel like she just had everything picked for her and she just had to do it. And like, she didn't really want to. I always had that feeling from her of like, she wanted to be friends with us. She sat with me at lunch a few times and then like, it was almost like she got told like, no, you can't sit with them. It was weird. Anyway, that was like the social politics at my little, very tiny rural high school. And besides those people, by and large, I was excluded from them and I was also excluded from, but weirdly not excluded, the youth group at the Baptist church, like the popular Baptist church in town. Even though I went to youth group with them sometimes, but they were all convinced I was going to hell because I was Catholic.
Right.
So it was just really funny because I was like in, but never really in. So anyhow, yeah.
I've taught for a long time. And here's what I have come to as far as education goes. I really think that there is no point in having any educational process that has evaluation as part of it. In terms of grades. I just think no school ever should have grades.
That's so interesting.
Because as soon as you introduce grades, you change the entire system from let's learn to here is how you get a good mark.
Yeah.
And that it is human nature to respond to incentives, and that every educational institution that uses grades creates perverse incentives.
Yeah.
Simply by introducing them. And so that students honestly don't care about learning anything. Most students do not care about learning anything.
Yeah.
They care about getting a good grade.
Yeah. I actually had like a big argument on Twitter one time. It went so sideways. It was really weird because somebody said something about grades and like my kids are homeschooled and I don't grade them. Why would I grade them? Like, I know how they're doing. I looked at the work. It was correct. Or we don't get this one yet. So we're just going to figure it out until we get it. And now it's correct. So what's the point? Why would I grade that?
Right.
And I was kind of just like mentioning that on the timeline and it did numbers for some reason I don't understand. And people were not happy. Like, they were like, you're doing them such a huge disservice. And how are you going to record? How are you going to keep records and whatever? I was like, oh gosh, records. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but they're learning. Well, I mean, and in my state, they do have to do mandatory like state testing every couple of years or whatever, which is fine with me because I want to have, it helps me to have a baseline of like, oh, good, the things you're supposed to know.
It still, though, creates perverse incentives even for homeschool. Right?
Yeah.
That I really think that I have just come to embrace a model for education that is essentially based around play.
Yeah.
That increasingly intellectual play as a person gets older, and that anything other than that produces essentially the society that we have. I don't know if you know anything about, say, like Waldorf schools or anything like that.
I'm obsessed with Waldorf. Waldorf and Charlotte Mason are like my love language.
I don't know much about what Charlotte Mason wants to do educationally, but I think a Waldorf approach is more sort of play oriented
for little kids.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. Like, I don't even know if Waldorf goes up. I think I've heard of some Waldorf schools going up.
It does. There are Waldorf high schools.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know how that would look, but Waldorf, and I mean, when I say I'm obsessed, I mean,
right.
I'm obsessed in the ADHD way. Okay, like the parts that are like shiny and pretty. I haven't like sat down and read a Waldorf book. I've read excerpts, snippets. I follow accounts, whatever. And like in terms of Charlotte Mason, like she's just got a lot to say about. Well, and I haven't sat down and read a Charlotte Mason book either. Like, oops, should have probably done that. I don't know. But again, like I'm just kind of saturated in the culture of all of this stuff. So she's my main takeaway from her is a lot of like be outside when you can, and like learn through nature when you can. And it's very much like let's honor childhood.
Yes, and I go ahead.
I just love that. But Waldorf is.
When I talk about play for older kids, I mean, here is this Socratic dialogue. It's full of interesting ideas. I want to have a class where we all just read it and I come in and I say, what do you guys think to people who are 17? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I find that a lot of times when I try that, no one will say anything.
Yeah.
Because they don't know because they're trained in a kind of anti-play educational process where they look to me to tell them what the answer is.
Yeah.
And they're not even in a place where they can conceive that you could literally just read this thing and start talking about what Socrates said.
Right.
Start talking. You read it. What do you think? And I often encounter an attitude where I think they think it's a trick question.
Yeah.
Like if Socrates says, hey, rhetoric is this thing that elevates your soul to the outer rims of heaven. And he does say this I think it's in the Phaedrus. And inside you, there's this chariot that's being pulled by two horses, one that wants to pull you heavenward and one that wants to drag you to basically hell. Right. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, do you think that's true?
Oh my gosh. I would have. You would have been able to make me shut up in that class.
Yeah. And because there's no play. And I was thinking the other day, like, one of the good things about my educational process is that I did have some opportunities to do that, both in high school, but in college as well. Because I think I went through high school and college long ago enough that there was like a remnant of a different world. Mm-hmm. So now even in college, you're supposed to have like a rubric that shows how you grade every assignment. And it's completely so bogus. It's completely bogus because in some way it's supposed to make the grading more objective.
Right.
But It doesn't, because I'm still the one that decides subjectively whether what you've done is good or excellent.
You're not grading objectively if you're not grading like math.
Right. Right.
And even math, now they're like, show all your work. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how people are grading math these days.
Yes. So I just think that there's almost no. So what happens when you have a system where there are grades? You have kids who don't care about their grades at all.
Yeah.
You kind of the classroom kind of bifurcates. I don't care. I've given up.
Yeah.
I'll do just enough to get by.
Yeah.
And then you have other students who come to you crying because they missed 7 points on an assignment, and they want you to explain in detail what they did wrong to cause them to miss those 7 points.
Yeah.
And it is, in a way, it's both dehumanizing of the teacher and the student, because part of the way that I know that you don't deserve those 7 points is that I have spent my life reading and writing, and I know from looking whether yours is average, good, or excellent. Because it removes from the whole grading process the question of expertise, the question of taste, the question of like any kind of refinement on the part of the teacher.
Yeah.
Right.
Or mastery.
And what's that? Yeah, our mastery.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's dumb.
I want to tell you a story about the grade before I got diagnosed.
Oh,
Because I got diagnosed in 4th grade. Mm-hmm. But when I was in 3rd grade, because I was thinking about this because of the cubby desks and how I used to read in them. Mm-hmm. Okay. I had a really good friend. His name was Rocky. Mm-hmm. And when I was in 3rd grade, Rocky and I used to take our pencil boxes, and we would sharpen our pencils until the pencils were little nubs. And we would, like, the pencil shavings would roll up like a little rose. Mm-hmm. And so we would sharpen down all the pencils until it was just a whole bunch of little roses. And we'd put them in our pencil boxes. And then we'd spread it out like it was bedding, like for a hamster cage or something. And then for some reason we had pipe cleaners. Mm-hmm. And so we'd take these pipe cleaners and we'd wrap them around our fingers. And then I'd like fold it over at the end and like take it off, and it'd be like this boingy little like snake. Mm-hmm. And so we'd make these little snakes and we'd name them, and we'd put them in our pencil sharpener, like our pencil boxes with all the little things in them. And we'd be like having our little snake stories next to each other with our desks. And my teacher was like, this cannot be happening. So she separated us and put me somewhere with another student that I wouldn't be as friendly with, right? Mm-hmm. Joke's on her, though. I'm friendly with absolutely everyone you put me next to. Right. So she moved me around the classroom so many times, right? And then finally she couldn't take it anymore, and she took me and my desk and moved me and my desk to the corner away, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm alone, no friends, cool. I'm doing my own thing in my desk now, still not listening. So she's really frustrated at this point. She's just like, I can't believe you. You're not even next to anyone, and you're still not listening, not paying attention, whatever. So she takes my desk away and gives me someone else's desk, because she's like, maybe this girl won't mess with stuff if it's somebody else's desk, like a desk that's like not as chaotic as my desk actually was. Like, who knows what was even in there. But now I have someone else's desk. This is so cool. Like, what's in here, you know? Right. So obviously I'm like, what's this? Is this chapstick? Is this lip gloss? You know, like I'm looking through this desk, and she turns around and sees me. And at this point, she's just so frustrated. But like, as an adult looking back on this, I'm just like, how did this happen? Like, she picks up the desk, empties everything out onto the floor, like in front of the whole 3rd grade class, right? Picks it up over her head and chucks it across the room.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, you're going to sit here in your chair by yourself. And I wasn't like, I don't really remember being traumatized by it. I was just like, what?
Right.
But there were a lot of like exasperated teacher moments like that, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And And then later in 4th grade, we had the diagnosis. But
yes,
it's kind of crazy to me, like thinking back. I don't know. I'm curious if other people have this many sort of memories of teachers becoming like violent or almost violent. Like she threw my desk.
right.
Another teacher at the school.
Yeah, and realistically, she should have been fired.
For that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's like the least of the things.
She
Like
put children in danger by throwing furniture.
Right.
I mean, she literally could have hurt someone. What if the desk landed on a kid?
Well, right. Well, I had a music teacher, and I think it was the same year. And I was friends with this other kid that was like this short, bright red hair, like just ball of energy, probably hyperactive ADHD, like whatever. Of course, he was my friend. I had a music teacher who got so frustrated with him that she threw a xylophone at him. Like metal and wood. I've been told that's called something else if it's metal and wood. I don't know. Anyways, she threw this heavy instrument at him, and it missed, and it hit the wooden cupboard behind him and put a dent in it. And that was crazy. When I was in high school, throwback to Mr. Forbes with the origami. There was a student, his name was Jimmy, and he was, let's go back. Let's pretend his name was Tommy. I don't know. I feel like I should protect the innocent. He was just a really disturbed kid. Like he was a pothead, like he would come into class with like, he had long hair. It was always down in front of his face. He had like his bass guitar with him in class when he's like not supposed to. And he's like,
oh yes, not supposed to. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Half the time he wasn't in class because he skipped class to smoke or whatever. And I think about this a lot because I think about the difference between the way he responded. I had him in 2 classes. I had him in class with Mr. Forbes, and I had him in class with this math teacher I had named Mr. Hinky. I'm not going to protect him because he did this to himself.
Well, one note on that. The Anne Lamott quotation where she says, if people didn't want you to write about them, they should have acted better.
Yeah. If people wanted to be spoken of fondly. Yeah. That's exactly.
Mr. Hinky was.
Yeah, Mr. Hinky did not behave.
Right.
So Jimmy was, just think about the juxtaposition that I saw between the way Mr. Forbes treated Jimmy and the way Mr. Hinky treated Jimmy and the way Mr. Hinky behaved in both of those. Did I say Mr. Hinky? The way Jimmy behaved in both of those classes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anyways. Well, okay, so if at the beginning he behaved the same in both classes, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
And Mr. Hinky's class was math. Oh, Joe's texting me back. Yes, come back. Finally saw my text message. Where ADHD, it's gone.
Mr. Hinky.
Mr. Hinky was math.
Ricky or Timmy or whatever his name is.
Tommy, whatever. Doesn't matter. We'll go with Tommy. He's in class. He's acting up. He's driving Mr. Hinky nuts. Anyways, finally in one class, Mr. Hinky loses it and comes back and smacks him like in the back of the head so hard that his face goes down and hits the desk and bounces back up. And when it comes back up, Mr. Hinky hits him again across the face and his hair tie comes out and flies across the classroom. And like all of us students were like,
that's a crime.
He's going to get fired, right? Like, right? This was assault. Like, really. So, anyways, he didn't get fired. Nothing happened. It was like a slap on the wrist. I feel like I shouldn't have seen, I have so many stories like this. I feel like I should not have seen this happen so many times. There's something on my screen. I just think that's crazy. But anyways, Jimmy's behavior in Mr. Hinky's class got worse. He, much more cocky because Mr. Hinky didn't get fired and he lost control, so.
Right. Well, and what that communicates to you is that the rules are meaningless.
Yeah.
That it increases your okay. So when I was 12, the same year that the book got yanked out of my hands, I watched my gym teacher beat Ricky Timmy Weed at my school. Okay. Yeah. Literally beat him, like pick him up and slam him into the metal lockers over and over again.
See, I bet we all have stories like this. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so what that communicated to me was that the entire adult world was fake.
Yeah.
Because there are no rules.
Right.
And that all the rules that exist for the convenience of the person in power. Mm-hmm. Because when the person in power obviously breaks the rules, they no longer apply.
Right.
That's one of the great lessons of public schooling is that the system exists for those in power.
Yeah. 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 Yep. I think I kind of got that message too. And I mean, technically part of my diagnosis is also ODD, which I always thought was fake until I kind of understood it. What's that?
What an ODD means?
Oppositional defiant disorder.
Oh, I see.
I got problems with authority.
I see. I thought it meant maybe you were just odd.
Well, that too,
Well, I mean, that's the sort of the system diagnosis. You're just
right.
An odd person, right?
Right.
Is ADHD even real?
Yes. I believe it's
ask
completely
because
real.
on Twitter at times I see you dealing with that question.
People don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Wait, let me come back though, because I wanted to tell you that I also watched how Mr. Forbes treated.
Oh yes,
Timmy Johnny Weed. And the difference was, and I mean, this is not going to be surprising to you at all. Mr. Forbes just watched him. He didn't patronize him at all. He watched really closely. And the minute he caught him doing something that was brilliant, because he was brilliant. Of course he was brilliant. Why else was he going to be so checked out?
Right.
Sorry. The minute he caught him doing something brilliant, he praised it publicly. He said, that was genius, everybody. Did you know that Jimmy's a genius, by the way? Like, non-geniuses don't consider things in this way. Mm-hmm. And I mean...
like all the rest of you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And what do you think happened? He didn't miss Mr. Forbes' class anymore. Right. Like he sat up straight. He paid attention. He turned in his work, I'm like, it's literally not hard. I mean, I'm sure it's harder than that in some cases, but the thing is, there's so many cases where it's like, it's not hard actually. Like there's so many kids that are just like, just try a little, like you'll get such a huge return on just noticing.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. So ADHD is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you deal with some skepticism about that at times, right? On Twitter.
Yeah, I do.
How does that come across? Like what do those people say?
You just want an excuse to take your speed. Right? The speed that I avoided taking for 20 years. Because I desperately did not want to believe that I needed to medicate in order to fold laundry. Ew. Who wants that? Yeah. Like I was and the most annoying thing always, and I can get really in my head about this because people who have an opinion can link all sorts of things, and I'm not going to watch most of that either. So, okay, I get it. But, like, oh, it's just so frustrating because I'm like, because I was diagnosed when I was 10, I've been doing some form of research on this since then, essentially. Right. I mean, like, I found the document that, like, from my diagnosis when I was maybe 11 or 12. I was messing around in my parents' room with my best friend. I don't know what I was doing, probably looking for quarters so we could go to the pool. Right. And I stumbled across my diagnosis, which I hadn't seen. I knew I had a diagnosis, but I hadn't read the write-up. And at the time, like, I was diagnosed back in 95. If I was 10, that would have been like 95.
Okay.
And I don't know what the diagnoses look like now. But back then, and I mean, I was reading it with a kid brain too, so
Sure.
who knows? But I remember sitting down and reading it with my childhood best friend, and it was little girls weren't diagnosed that much, you know? Mm-hmm. So the here's what you should expect out of your child who has this diagnosis section wasn't really written for me. Like, it was written for hyperactive little boys, really. And I didn't understand that. I thought it was written for me because it had my name on it, you know? And so it said things like all the things about hyperactivity. The one that like really stabbed me in the heart was like, might have trouble making and maintaining friendships. Because I didn't believe that about myself.
Right.
Like, and it wasn't true. Like, I had always been kind of hyper fixated on my friends and obsessed with them and loved them so much and didn't have any trouble maintaining those friendships at all. So I was just like, what? Like I didn't know what gaslighting was, but I felt totally gaslit, you know, like, what do you mean? Like, this is the one thing I have, right? Like, I'm good at this. Don't take this from me, you know?
Right.
And, so I don't know, like, from the point where I read that, and probably because of that, where I was like, that's not true. So if that's not true, then what else is true here? You know, like, I know that that's not true. I don't accept that. I don't receive that. So what else here do I not receive? So as a child, like, I read that and I just rejected it, like, outright. I was like, I don't know why they did this. I don't know why they think I needed this. I want nothing to do with this. Like, this is not me. I said this is not real. I was a kid. I was like, that's fake. That sounds fake. No one's explained it to me in a way that makes sense. And it's saying all sorts of things about me that can't possibly be true. So fake, fake, fake. And I mostly blew it off until I was in high school because I was a kid, you know, like I respect the teacher that brought it up to my mom because she saw like real red flags, like not leaving when everyone else left, you know, like props to her. She cared about me and she wanted me to be cared for. And props to my mom for taking me and getting me a diagnosis because she wasn't just going to let me flail, you know?
I mean, you might still be sitting in that classroom.
Right. Can I leave?
Right.
The bell ring.
Right.
You know, but like, besides, I think they were just kind of trying to cover their bases. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really have like trouble that I remember. Mm-hmm. Well, apart from teachers throwing stuff at us or whatever, you know. Right. I just had such a carefree childhood, you know, like I wasn't thinking about any of that. My homework was barely existent because I was a kid.
Right.
So, like, how is this really impacting me? You know, like, school gets over, I go home, I go play in the meadow for 8 hours. Who cares? You know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when I got to high school, I was making good grades. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I was making good grades. I actually, like, in physics, I'm like still really proud of this to this day. I beat our future high school valedictorian at the end of the year, like in our physics grade. I was like, I got you. Because he was like the resident smart kid, right?
Right.
Anyways, I was doing great. And then I hit junior year, and one of my best friends got a devastating spinal cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. One of my other best friends had an insanely tragic loss in her life. And I got like a real crush for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I just quit thinking about school. Mm-hmm. I didn't have room for school in my head anymore. Like with those three things, it's too much. There's not room for anything else. Yeah. And I didn't know how to deal with any of that. Mm-hmm. And so my grades went from like A's and B's to like C's. And that alerted the special ed department. Uh-oh, like she's struggling now. We need to get involved. Right. So they got me and they made me an IEP. I didn't really like.
Which is what?
Individualized education plan.
But what does that mean? What?
So when I had it, I didn't understand what it meant.
Right.
I felt so chaotic about the whole thing because I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I got a C because these things happened.
Sure.
I'm very distracted.
Right.
School is boring. I have a crush now. I'm worried about my other friend here, like whatever. Right. And I think if somebody had just been like, oh my God, those 3 things happened. Do you want to talk about that?
All right.
I would have been like, yes. And then I would have talked about it. And then I don't know, like if somebody could have maybe alerted me to the fact that the homework was there in that corner of the board, that might have helped, like if they could have put that on the IEP. But that's not what they put on the IEP. And they also were like fundamentally uninterested in what I thought should go on the IEP. Like they said, no, here's what helps people with ADHD. So you need to do these things. You need to be eating in class when no one else is eating. You need to be getting up to leave and going and getting drinks of water when nobody else is getting up to leave to go get drinks of water. I would have loved that. I would have loved it if it wasn't like under this pretense, like Sarah's allowed because she's special and different.
Right. This is a personality difference between us. I would have taken that to be like, okay, I'm going to go drink 55 minutes of water right now.
I mean, I might have taken advantage of that one. I'm not sure. But
okay. Sorry to interrupt your story. Yes.
No, you're fine. I get it. It's funny. Right. But just the eating in class, like they just wanted me to have all these extra privileges, like extra time on tests. And I was like, I don't want extra time on tests because like I beat Phil in physics. I beat him. Now, if I have extra time on a test and I beat him, no one's going to count that. They're going to be like, that's not fair. You had an unfair advantage. You had extra protein and time, And I'm like, I don't need any of that. Like, testing is not my problem. Testing is literally not my problem. Like, one of the things with ADHD is, this is like a feature, like one of maybe the biggest feature in ADHD is that there's 2 types of time. There's just now and not now. And and you have to go ahead and try to manage that. Like, well, when do I do the laundry? Well, not now. So then when? I don't know. Not now. But like if I'm already taking a test right now, we're good. I'm here. I'm taking it. It's now,
Right.
I guess I could see spacing out. I don't know.
Why did you wait 20 years to take medication?
Well, okay. So I was medicated in 6th grade, briefly. I was on Ritalin and I didn't know. See, I didn't have this stuff explained to me. I didn't understand. If somebody had said to me, your brain has fewer dopamine receptors than a neurotypical brain, and any creature with an parasympathetic nervous system has to have dopamine in order to do anything. So that's why sometimes it feels like you can't do things when you want to. Dr. Russell Barkley, who's a really good one to listen to about this, he says that the ADHD brain has like I forget how he puts it, but it's almost like there's a wall up between the part of your brain that knows stuff and the part of your brain that does stuff. And he's like, this is the problem because you don't have a problem with knowing. This is probably honestly why the unsolicited advice gets me so much because I'm like, I know. I just can't do. He's like, but you cannot do. And this is the problem. And so that doesn't mean we can never do, obviously. But so the ADHD medications are stimulants. And if I had known that, I think it would have helped me because I didn't understand. I was like, I didn't know the thing about the dopamine. I didn't know what kind of medication they were putting me on. I didn't know what it was supposed to do or like what it was for. They tried to explain, I guess, but like I don't know. It didn't make sense. Right. And I remember sitting in class and just feeling like, well, with Ritalin, I felt super thirsty, thirsty. And I was a little kid, so I barely remember it, but I do remember feeling I just didn't like it. I didn't want to feel like different than how I feel usually. I I lost my ability to just slip into daydreams. And I was unnerved by that. Like, I hated it. I liked daydreaming. That's why I did it, you know? So when I was in 6th grade, I would go to the office, and I didn't know that it was just a stimulant either, you know, like, and I didn't drink coffee yet because I was a kid. I didn't know any of this. So it sounded like something scary. Like, what is this? Why is it brain sniping me? Why can't I daydream? What is this? What is it? And so I would get called, and I don't know, like, maybe this is just my personality. Like, I didn't want to be in middle school and high school. This is probably just standard, like, middle school and high school girl, maybe. Did not want to be, I mean, I'm a 4, so I love being different, but I didn't want to be different. I want to be different on my terms, you know?
You're an Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
Right.
But I want to be different on my terms, not on other people's terms that they've defined for me. So I didn't want to be singled out and given this label that I didn't even understand, that I couldn't really explain to my friends, and called to the office and then, like, medicated about it, you know? So, but that's what they did. And it always kind of amazes me that that the adults in charge, like, didn't really seem to care who they said all this stuff in front of, you know, like all my peers, all my teachers, you know, like, I mean, teachers, fine, I guess they're supposed to know or whatever, but it always bothered me that they got that report too, the one that I read when I was 12, before they met me. So as a teenager, I was like, so you're expecting trouble before I walk into your classroom, before you even meet me. Like, I hated that so much. I was like, you already have, like, a preconceived notion about who I am, and I hate this. But anyway, in 6th grade, I would get called to the office in the middle of the day, every day, to take my meds. And I complied for, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks or something. And then I hated it so much, I just started hiding it under my tongue when they gave it to me. And on my way back to class, I would just, like, spit it out and shove it down the grate in the water fountain. Because I was like, I'm not doing this. I hate this, you know? So I had such a aversion to that. And then when I was like 19 or 20, my mom wanted me to try medicating again before I learned how to drive. Like, they were really scared to let me learn how to drive. And I think the ADHD had something to do with that.
Right.
And I complied, and I didn't want to, but I could understand their reasoning, you know, like, let's not have you get in a car wreck, whatever. I'm like, okay, I think I'll be fine. But actually, fun fact, people with ADHD are much more likely to get in fender benders than high-speed collisions because your adrenaline is going when you're driving fast, like when you're going faster.
Okay, so what's the... Oh, so therefore you could focus better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But when those stimulating hormones recede, that your attention starts to waver.
Yeah, because now it's boring.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So if you're just like, all of my wrecks have been like parking lot, just spaced out because I was in a parking lot. Who cares? You're in a parking lot. You're going slow. Right. You're going like 2 miles an hour. Oops.
Right.
So anyway, but my parents didn't know that either because there was less information.
Sure.
So anyways, I was on Concerta when I was 19 and 20. And then I found out way later, that Concerta is just Ritalin again.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't know that, but it's like slower release or something. Okay. And again, I was so thirsty all the time. And I lost so much weight, completely by accident. And I don't know, like I couldn't really tell if it made me feel different or not. I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking for. Again, nobody had told me that it was a stimulant, and the internet was different then than it is now.
Sure. Right.
So, yeah. I worked at a summer camp, and I didn't. Oh man! So the people who don't believe that ADHD is real are not relegated to Twitter. I feel like I see it kind of everywhere, like especially in like the circles that I tend to run in, because Christians, people who lean more conservative, I feel like are not always, but are often much more likely to just be like, because they're more likely to be higher in conscientiousness, I think. And so they can't relate. They're just like, what do you mean you're time blind and you're late? That's fake. Like, you just need to try harder. You just need to try harder. What's wrong with you?
Right.
And anyway, so I worked at a Christian summer camp that summer when I started taking Concerta again, because I was like, I'm going to drive. I'm going to go be a camp counselor at this place. And so I didn't want to let anybody at camp know, except for like the director needed to know or whatever.
Right.
So I had a safety pin bracelet.
Okay.
Because I was so punk rock.
Right.
And and it was like up and down safety pins. Like, and it was amazing. It was stretchy and it was all these safety pins.
You want to know how punk rock I was?
How punk rock?
I used to wear bracelets I had made out of forks that I would take and put a fork around your arm.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I think that's punker rocker than the safety pin even.
Oh, you think so?
Yes. But anyway, not to derail your story.
Well, I used to take the Concerta because you have to eat it, like you have to take it on a full stomach. So I couldn't just like take it in my cabin and leave.
Right.
I had to take it down to the mess hall and eat. And then
you would take it in your bracelet?
I would take it in my bracelet because I would like hide it in there. Like, nobody can know.
Okay.
I don't have to like reach into my bag and get anything.
Right.
I'd just be like real smooth about it.
Sure.
But like, I have this memory of standing there, and because I was like, if they know that I'm doing this, like, there's going to be so much. I can deal, like, if they find out, fine. But it's exhausting. It's just exhausting. Like, I didn't want to fight for it. At that point, by the time I was 19, I wasn't, like, I was on the fence. Like, I was kind of like, maybe ADHD is real. Maybe it's not. I've been told this my whole life. Oh my gosh. Like, the way I fought, like, hook, line, and sinker, like, so hard in high school just for them to leave me alone. And they never would. And my mom even tried to get them to leave me alone. And they said, legally, we can't. And I just, man.
So
anyway.
Now we've been going like an hour and 20 minutes. So tell us the story of what's happening now.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that just real quick to wrap that part up. I'm like I was standing there with like the meds in my bracelet, right?
Right.
And I'm standing on the porch, and like all the cute boys at camp are standing over there talking about they've got an ADHD camper, and they're like, "That's not real. We can't believe this kid takes meds. Ugh, people that take meds for their ADHD are just using crutches."
Oh wow!
And I'm standing there like with it in my bracelet, like y'all don't even know.
That's like a scene from a movie.
Yeah, I have a lot of those. I don't know why. Sometimes it makes me nervous because I'm like, why is this prop here in this scene? Is it going to get used later? God.
Right.
Anyway, I know I rambled too much, but
recently you've started taking medication again.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So I didn't for 20 years.
Right.
Because I didn't want to.
Right.
And I was worried, because there's so much. The stigma is rough. And I had done enough research. I have a hard time trusting my own research because I'm extremely high in trait openness. And what if I'm wrong?
Right.
But according to everything I could find, rigorously as I could, like, ADHD is real. This is like structurally in the brain. I mean, it even impacts your body in all sorts of ways. So like people who have ADHD are more likely to have binocular vision dysfunction, which I have. I don't know if you can see. I have like a prism glasses sticker here, so I can see straight. And they're more likely to have hypermobility and all kinds of other things. So I'm like, well, people treat it like it's just laziness or something, but I'm like, this is literally something that's felt all throughout your body. Like this is a physical thing. And a lot of people who have ADHD have the MTHFR gene mutation. So there's just a lot. There's a lot going on there. And so I'm like, there's no reason for me to believe that all these people who say ADHD isn't real and that medication is dangerous and addictive and all the things, there's no reason for me to believe that they're right and I'm wrong.
Right.
But I was still kind of scared to try it because I was like, I don't want to be reliant on something. Who wants that? And I didn't know how I was going to react. And I remembered last time, I'm like, I don't want to lose my ability to daydream. But then I was looking at it and I'm like, this is a stimulant. This is a stimulant like coffee. And it wears off at the end of the day. So, so whatever, you know?
Huh?
So finally, in my case, like I got to a point where after 2020 and the years that followed, we moved, like we did a cross-country move. All sorts of things went sideways in many different ways. And I got to a point where I think if you go by like the body keeps the score stuff, you know, like my lung collapsed 5 times when I was pregnant with my last kid and all kinds of, it compiled to where I couldn't manage anymore. I just couldn't. I was like, I'm not functional. Like I can't quit crying. Part of ADHD is emotional dysregulation. Because it takes executive function to regulate your emotions. And I was trying, like I was to this ridiculous point where I was like, it's almost comical. I'm like, I can't quit crying. I can't quit crying. Like I'm trying so hard. I'm doing all of the things and I literally just can't stop crying. This is the worst. And I was having like rolling panic attacks every day. And I'm a homeschool mom. I don't have time for that, you know? So there was some stuff going on in my personal life with some of my friends that really just was above my pay grade. And so I got to a point where I was like, I'm just going to throw everything at it because my kids deserve better than this, you know? Like they just can't have their mom falling apart.
Right.
So I believe in counselors and counseling so much. I have a really hard time trusting any counselor ever because I'm a contrarian and I am horrible and I always feel like I know more than them. And I'm like, how are you going to help me if you're not even wise? So
that's not a bad question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, otherwise I would have been in therapy, but finally I found a counselor I thought I could trust because somebody else that I love trusted them. And Joe called for me because he's the best. And I didn't have any executive function in my bones anywhere to be found. And anyways, I went and I spent a whole day with her. I just think this is so funny. I almost spent the night. She was like, just come have a whole sleepover and tell me everything. And I was like, okay. So I went and I spent an entire day and I told her absolutely everything. And we made salad in the kitchen and we sat in rocking chairs on the porch and watched the traffic go by.
Right.
And then after that, I was like, I'm doing that and I'm going to get on meds and see if it helps. Because I was just like, we're going to pull out all the stops.
Right.
And it did. I mean, I wouldn't say it fixed me. Am I fixed? I don't know. I'm still kind of a hot mess, but I'm not crying every single day and I'm not having rolling panic attacks anymore. And I can do the dishes, you know? So yeah, I was like, I'm just going to try it. The first doctor that I talked to, trying to get medicated, tried to put me on an SSRI instead. Because even the doctors don't believe ADHD is real half the time. Like when they're not educated about it. Right. And I asked him, because he was, you know, he was so patronizing. He was just like, what do you eat for breakfast? And I was like, I don't know, French toast. And he's like, I'm hearing a lot of carbs. And I was like, do you know how much eggs I put in my French toast? Right. I'm like, wow. I'm not gonna protein my way out of this, dude. I promise you. Anyway, he was just like, those are dirty drugs. People get addicted. They ruin their lives. I won't prescribe this to you unless you get on an SSRI first. And I was like, I've been on SSRIs before. That's not going to help me. I know it. Right. And briefly, I was on SSRIs for like 2 months or something. Anyways, I finally got him to refer me to a psychiatrist. I'd like fought with him. Like,
right.
Anyhow. Yeah. And she was great. Like when I actually got to her and she knew what ADHD was, I asked the doctor if he knew what ADHD was. I was just so frustrated. I was like, are you educated about this? And he was like, yeah, we had classes about it in med school. And I'm like, you don't have to remind me that you went to med school. I know you're a doctor.
Right.
I'm curious how many hours you got at med school about ADHD. Because you've got opinions about it that are like Reddit opinions.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, why do you have Twitter opinions about ADHD? Anyway. Yeah, so my psychiatrist was just like, I sat down with her. I was like, I got diagnosed when I was 10. She's like, yes, okay. She just wrote me a script and off we go. And she's been great.
And it's helped.
Yeah. It's helped so much. It's helped so much. I only increased my dose one time at the very beginning when we were just like trying to feel it out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And and that wasn't really a dose increase so much as it wears off. So like it only lasts for like 5 hours. So I would take it and I'd get through all the kids' homeschool, and which is great because I needed that. Mm-hmm. But then I'd sit down to do my own creative stuff and I just like, there's nothing left. I got no juice, you know?
Right.
Like the things I want to do. This is what people don't get. This isn't just like me fighting for my life to do the dishes. Like I want to play my ukulele and it's sitting right here, you know? But like I can't make my arms move to pick it up, that kind of thing. And it's not really like tired isn't really the right word. It's just like you can't, it's like some kind of weird paralysis or something. So I told my psychiatrist about that and she said, she was really funny because she's like, 5 hours is great. Like, that's a really good stretch of time. And I'm like, yeah, it's not enough time.
Right.
And so she was like, all right, well, let's give you 2 doses and you can start the second dose, you know, for the second half of the day and see how that does. So I haven't increased it since then. It's been about a year. I haven't felt, excuse me, sorry, still. You wanted this interview after I was sick. Yeah. If people accuse you of being like, you're going to gain a tolerance, you're going to get addicted, you're going to, I don't know, all the things, the side effects, the irritability. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to tell people, like, I actually have ADHD, which means like, yes, if you do not have ADHD and you take Adderall, you're going to have a bad time, I guess. Right. Like, that's what it sounds like. Heart palpitations and anxiety and rage. I've heard of ADHD rage. I don't know, but an addiction and wanting to increase it and all of those things. But when you actually have ADHD, like it's completely opposite. It took my anxiety out and I was like, oh my God, like I can think. I can think. Like really? And like now I still get a little anxious now and then, but it's nothing like it was. And I can regulate my moods so much better. I'm absolutely not addicted. Like I was sick all last week and I didn't take it because why would I take it? I'm sick. Right. I just need to sleep the whole time. Right. I mean, I can take it and go to sleep if I want to, which I guess I'm not supposed to be able to do unless I have ADHD. Right. Yes. Like sometimes I do just take my Adderall at like 7 a.m. And just go back to sleep. And I'm asleep for like 3 more hours. Okay, sure. I wake up and I'm like, I wake up not feeling like I'm dying because there's Adderall's in my system. That's nice. So I don't know, but yeah. So
that's where it stands.
Yeah.
It's a very long and interesting story.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I wanted to hear all of that. Yeah. But we didn't talk about what we literally did not talk about what we planned to talk about at all. Well, so you wanted to talk about synchronicities.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah.
And you also wanted to talk about a bunch of our Twitter mutuals and just make up a bunch of salacious rumors about them. Isn't that what so we'll do that next time too.
All right, watch out, gang. I'm coming to roast you.
Yes, that's that. Well, we'll do a Twitter mutuals roast podcast.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.